Welcome back. In the previous video, we have seen Azure Data Factory pipelines, relationship between pipelines, dataset, link service, and activities basically. And in this video, we will concentrate only on copy activity because copy activity is one of the most commonly used or one of the important activity so that you want to know if you're learning Azure Data Factory. So we want to cover this only copy activity in a separate video in detail. So we are bringing up this video. Before getting started, if you are new to this channel and haven't yet subscribed to this channel, I would recommend you to please subscribe for this channel and also share with your colleagues and friends. Let's get started. So, as you know, copy activity in the previous video we have seen very briefly, but in this video we will see a more detailed way. But copy activity, as you know, it is one of the activity that you will be using as part of the data factory. In data factory, there are a lot of activities, and copy activity is one of the activity which comes under data transformation. That means this is an activity which does the data transformation from one location to another location. So that is a very basic layman definition of copy activity. And if you see here, copy data among data store located on premise and in the cloud. Basically, this activity is capable of bringing the data both from on premise or from the cloud sources, and also push it back to the or publish it back to the on premise databases or on premise locations, files and locations, or that locations might be in the cloud, right? And the copy activity is executed on the integration runtime. So what is integration runtime? Let us understand. So in the previous video, we have not seen it like very detailed, but we have seen till link service. Integration runtime is nothing but it is a engine basically where your actual code will execute. Okay. Suppose you want to bring the data from a SQL server. Okay. In that case, you are writing a particular query or a store procedure. In that case, that execution will happen on that integration runtime. Say for example, if you are using a on-premise or if you're having a source or target which is on-premise and you want to read a data or write a data to a particular like on-premise location. In that case, there will be a no default integration runtime. That means you have to create your own integration runtime, and that integration runtime will run on that particular machine where you want to kind of pull the data or push the data. That means whenever that compute capability, right? So you are writing a query, select star from a source, or you are inserting a particular data into the sink, which is an on-premise database. Take for example, in that case, you have to install that integration runtime in that particular machine, which you want to consider it as a source or sink. So your compute will move to that particular node. So your compute will not be in the Azure because you are using on-premise. On the other hand, let's take an example where you want to bring a data from Azure SQL DB, okay, or Azure Blob Storage, or Azure Data Lake Gen 2 or Gen 1. So in this case, since it is hosted within the Azure premises, so Azure owns the responsibility of setting up the integration runtime for you. So here you do not do anything. So by default, Azure will set up the platform. So you can just use that like integration runtime. If you have seen the previous video, we have not covered the integration runtime because both our source and sink are hosted in the Azure platform, which is a cloud source. But if you are using the on-premise, so then there will be no default facility. So you have to go download that integration runtime and do some setup in the on-premise location where your database or where your file system is located. So that is all about the integration runtime. So by now, I think you could have understood that there are different kinds of integration runtime. One is like Azure integration runtime, which comes by default, and another is self-hosted integration runtime. Very quickly, we will see the demo. We will start the demo with the integration runtime, and we will cover the details of this. Okay. And coming back to the copy activity, so apart from integration runtime, where copy activity will execute, that means copy activity will consume the power of this integration runtime. Right. So that means it will be consuming the power of the system where integration runtime is installed, and supported data store and file formats. That means in copy activity, as part of the data sets, you will be kind of creating a data structure, file formats, file folder locations, basically the tables, like table structure, schema, everything will be set up in the copy activity. And also, since there is a source and sink, if you want to do a like custom mapping between the source and sink columns, you can do a custom mapping as well. Right. So let us start with the demo now. As you mentioned, let us start the demo with the integration runtime. So as you can see, I am into the manage blade here. and you can see it will be by default, it will be in the link service. You can click on integration runtime. So you can see now it is a auto resolved integration runtime. That means the both the link services that we are having, right? So this both the link service, as you can see, it is pointing to auto resolved integration runtime. That means you are using a sources which are hosted in the cloud. So that's why you are not configuring any integration runtime by default here. Suppose if you are using on-premise SQL Server, then definitely you need to configure your own integration runtime. So in that case, you need to create an integration runtime here. You can see if as you can see, there are different. Azure is there, self-hosted is there, and Azure SSIS is there. But most commonly used is Azure and Azure self-hosted. The difference is, as you can see, if you are using Azure, it clearly says use this for running data flows, data movement, and in fully managed services and compute in Azure. That means for any Azure related data stores, right? So in that case, you can use Azure. But if you are using on-premise, it clearly says it is nothing but it is a self-hosted. Okay. If you are using on-premise, you have to choose it. And there's one more option where you can use a linked self-hosted. Linked self-hosted in the sense, if you have already created a like a integration runtime, so the same integration runtime you can link here. Basically, it is a sharing of a link services. So sharing of the integration runtime. This one. Okay. So to not to complicate, if I want to show you the self-hosted, right? So once you configure something and click on create, okay. So from this data factory, it will enable some keys and it will enable some sort of download option. You need to download this integration runtime and install in the machine, okay, where your on-premise SQL server is present, or install in the machine where your source system or target system are present. Okay, and when you install that, it will ask for the keys in the on-premise machine. So in that case, you need to provide these keys there. Okay, so that what happens by doing this is your data factory will get connected to your on-premise over the network. Okay, with these keys basically. And so this acts as an engine basically. So since this is installed in the on-premise machine, whenever a data factory request for select star of something or copy activity will request for some table, so that performance or that compute will run on that integration runtime and will consume memory and CPU of that machine where this integration runtime is installed. So this is important to know when you're working in on-premise, on also on-premise source or targets. Okay. So let me come back now. So as you can see, so I just created dummy one, but I can close it. So once you set it up, right? So once you set this up and apply it, and then it become available. So you can keep on refreshing. Then you can monitor this with this monitor icon here itself. So this is about integration runtime. Okay, but coming back to the actual topics where we were discussing a couple of options where we were talking about uh, these options. So as part of the demo, let's go to the demo section now in detail. So we can discuss about there is a general tab and there is a source and sync tab, and there is a mapping, there is a table options, and how to handle the folders and file options, different file format options for that matter, and what are the different settings that you can see in the copy activity, and how do you optimize or fine tune the performance, fine tune the copy activity if it is slow, if you want to enhance the performance. So there are a few things that you can do with it. So that we can see in the demo now. So now I'll come back to the pipeline in the author tab, and as you can see, this is a copy activity. So let us go step by step. So as you can see, when I click on the copy activity, it opens up the blade, which is having a multiple tabs. So the first tab is definitely a general tab where you are giving an activity name. So activity name is nothing but, as you can see, copy is equal to blob is the activity name of my copy activity. And description, you want to give some description for that. So you can give like a description. So this is just for a user or a developer reference, whoever want to like make it more document oriented. Right? And timeout is nothing but suppose your copy activity fails, or if a not fails, suppose if your copy activity is trying to establish a connection to the source or sync, but it is not able to, it is keep on retrying, right? So it is not able to establish the connection. In that time, it can time out after, like say, this is nothing but format in day, hours, minutes. So as you can see, is like 7 days. You can configure it like hours, minutes also. Whenever you set up the particular timeout, if you are setting up a timeout of 1 hour, after 1 hour, this copy activity will get timeout. And after that, if you want to retry it, so how many times you want to retry? You want to retry for 2 times, 10 times, something like that. With this, so basically this timeout and retry are related, as you can see. and what is the gap that you want to give in between this timeout. And once the timeout happen, so after that it has to retry. So if you're giving retry as 5, so when it is trying 5 times, what is the time interval gap that you're giving? So you are giving every that gap can be 30 seconds. After 30 seconds you can start the next iteration, something like this. Okay, so this is about the general tab. And coming to the next, which is the most important, that is source and sync tab, where in the source you can see a source dataset, in a sync you can see a sync dataset. So as you can see, these options will change according to the dataset that you are choosing here. If you are choosing like a SQL table storage dataset, so you will definitely see the table, query, stored procedure, which are SQL related. If you are choosing a file format like blob, right? So then it will ask you the copy behavior and what is the block size of each file that you want to write. So all these things will come into picture. Suppose if I choose this one, this option, like in a sync, if I'm choosing a SQL data set, it will ask different options as you can see, right? So what is the right behavior? Whether you want to insert, whether you want to upsert the data, whether you want to call the store procedure, whether you want to do a bulk insert. Okay, bulk insert in the sense, uh, as you can see, this documentation. Suppose if you are performing a huge amount of data transfer, like 50 GB, 100 GB of data, right? So during that time, you can use it for improve the performance for the bulk operation on a table with no index for the multiple points. So that's why we will use it. Usually this can be used when you're doing an initial load, in the project, right? Or if you're doing a one-time load, which is of a huge data, then you can give it S here, or else you can keep by default no. And if you are choosing sync as a database, so then this option will come. And next option is auto create. So if you are not having a particular table and then you want to auto create a table, right? You can just click on auto create a table. So based on the source data structure and data types, so your table in the sync will be automatically created. And if you want to perform a pre-copy skip, that means before copying the data to the target, if you want to clear out the data, like truncate the table and then load a fresh data, right? So in that case, you can use such a pre-copy activity. So you can write you can call some stored procedure. Uh, you can basically do any kind of activity before copying the data, right? And this is nothing but like right again, timeout is very similar to what we have explained for this, so but this is very specific for sync, so we don't want to explain it much. But yeah, this write batch is also important, where you want to mention how many records you are writing in one batch. So this will matter when you are doing a performance fine tuning, so this become important. And max concurrent connection. So this is also like it's upper limit of concurrent connection established to the dataset. Specify value only when you want to limit a concurrent connection. That means by default, data factory will decide how many current concurrent connection it needs. But if you want to specify or limit the concurrent connection because of some security reason or some architectural decisions, so then you can specify those limit basically. Okay, and disable performance metrics for analytics. If you don't want to perform any analytics metrics, if you don't want to capture any metrics, then you can check this box. This is for you are disabling the auditing of this sync activity, right? So one thing is very clear here. So if you're choosing a sync as a SQL dataset, your options will change and set accordingly. Okay, as you can see, if I give a file based dataset, it again the option will be different, because here you are writing to a file location. Okay, then it will ask what is the file format. What is the copy behavior? That means you want to write as it is. If you want to flatten the hierarchy, merge multiple files, so those details will obviously come in. But and what is the block size is nothing but what is the size of a file maximum. If you are copying a 1 GB of file, and here if you give 100 MB block size, it will create 10 files of 100 MB. So you are creating a basically you are partitioning the particular file here, so using this option. So these are all the options are related to file. So this SQL, these are all related to the table and stored procedure and other details. And in the similar in the sync also, if you choose this detail, it will ask you whether you want to copy a table, you want to write a particular, you can copy it directly a table, or you can write a query. Suppose if you want to say join two tables, or if you want to apply some filter, instead of directly copying a table, whole table, you can write that joins, tables, filters, everything. Okay, and then this query will execute in source, and only that data will be sent to sync. So similarly, you can call store procedure, and the output of the store procedure will be sent to sync. So yeah, what I'm telling here is like source also, if you're choosing SQL, then these will be options you can see here. Okay, and if you choose file source, then your options will completely change. What is a file path? Okay, what is a wild character? What are the list of files? So if you give a list of files, you can just give give a metadata file where you want to maintain the list of files. Only those file names which are mentioned in that file will be copied. So if you want to perform wild character, that means you want to copy all the CSV files. That means you can just give star.csv here. You can just mention here star.csv. So in that case, only your CSV files will be considered for the copy, right? So and if you want to filter like based on the start and end time, that means you want to copy, say for example, only the files which are in a specific time range, right? Based on the last modified. So if you want to copy the file of last 1 month, right? So then your start date will be last August 1st, and your end date will be today. So in that case, you are applying a filter. Only the files which have landed in this range will be considered for the copy. And recursively is nothing but if there are multiple files that you want to copy from the source. So basically, copy activity can copy one or more files. If you're specifying a file name, hard-coded file name, it considers only that to copy. If you are specifying a folder, it considers all the files within that folder to the copy. So recursively will only matter when you are giving a folder location and there are multiple files that you are considering for copying. So in that case, what happens is if you are choosing a recursively, if you are checking this, so all your files will be recursively copied to the sink. That means it will not go one by one, basically. It will consider copy for everything. And so there are additional, if you want to add any some additional columns, okay, you can go ahead and add it. But so let me keep it default for that, just for a demo purpose. So this is about source and sink. So this is where we configure the dataset, and based on the dataset, you will see a lot of options, and you have to fill those options here. And next, going to the mapping. So by default, you will not see anything here. I mean, these two will not also be there. That means by default, it will consider whatever there in your source and compatibly. If it is compatible in sync, it will copy. If it is not compatible in sync, it will fail. So it's always recommended if you use mapping, so the failure scenarios will be very less, because you are actually just you need to click on import schema. Once you import schema, it will bring you the columns from the source and sync by default. And then you can basically you can map it, remap it. So you want to map this to this column, first column to second column, and second column to first column. You can even do that. Okay. And say you want to add a new column, right? You can pretty much do that. Just click on the plus symbol here. It will bring up the new column. Suppose if you want to add a timestamp, right? So what you can do is you can just give a add dynamic content and say UTC time now. Okay, there's a date function and UTC time now. If you're just giving UTC time now, so it will just a moment. Yeah, import schema. Import schema has brought this, and next if you click on new mapping, so you're getting a column name. In the column name, you can just mention add dynamic content and add UTC time. Okay, so this will add an additional column basically into your when you're copying from source. These two columns will be considered by default, and along with the two columns, the third column will be your current timestamp in UTC, and that timestamp will be copied to sync. But make sure that particular in your table where you are writing, or if it is a table especially, the column should be same as source, or if it is not source, at least what exactly the output of source, right? It should be exactly the same, and the column name should be same. Otherwise, your copy activity will be incompatible and it get failed. So that is the whole importance of mapping that we are using. And the next option is setting. So setting is mainly used for, it is mainly useful for the performance fine tuning. This option, what you see, data integration unit, that we call it as a DIU, is very important performance fine tuning parameter. By default, it will be auto. Say you are copying like hundreds of GBs of data, so then it is taking 3 hours, 4 hours of time. During that time, this becomes handy where it shows maximum 32, but you can still give it, click on edit, and you can give like 128 or like say 200. Don't give it too high, because this will be charged accordingly to you, how many data integration units you are using, so it will be charged accordingly. But if it is really needed, so you can give like 128 or something, so that you will get the copy activity will be much faster, because it will use more data integration units. And degree of parallelism. So this is where you want to, this is also one of the performance fine tuning parameter. You can give like say 10, 20 or something to increase the number of connections that works on it, like, so that your parallel copy will take care of multiple rows. And data consistency verification. So these are like options for error handling, what we can see, where these options are used. So don't want to go in detail, not to confuse you at this point, but at a high level, these are used for data error management basically. Suppose if you want to skip incompatible rows, there are incompatible rows in the sense that there is a row which is violating a primary key constraint. There is a row which is violating a not null constraint. So in that case, if you choose this option, that row will be skipped before copying, and you will not get any error. So that's the whole advantage of these two fields basically. And logging, if you want to log the particular statistics of these logs, right? You can give any location here. And one more option which is important is enable staging. So enable staging we will only do when you are using like a when you want an intermediate storage. Like say for example, you are copying data from source to sink, but intermediately you want to copy it somewhere else before copying to sink. So from source, it will copy to the intermediate staging layer, and from that staging layer, it will copy to the sink. It is just an intermediate staging layer. So why we are doing it and when we have to do it is, so if you are using a poly-based storage, you can read about it. So only in that cases will use the staging because that will improve the performance. Otherwise, your performance will be very less. Like say you want to copy data to a data warehouse using polybase to improve the performance. So then only you have to enable the staging. So once you enable the staging, you have to give some blob storage or location. So that will act as your stage location, where your temporary data will be stored from source before sending from data from source to sink. So that's about settings. I think we have covered almost all the important details that are related to pertaining to copy activity. Thanks for watching.